The invitation to my own family's Easter gathering sat unopened on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I knew the moment I walked through those doors, I'd have to face the whispers, the pitying looks, and worst of all, her, Christine, my cousin, the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband for the past 8 months. I'm Skylar, and 6 months ago, I thought I had it all. The perfect marriage, a beautiful home in San Francisco, and a tight-knit family that gathered for every holiday like clockwork. Now, I was that woman, the one whose husband traded her in for a younger model. The fact that the younger model was my own flesh and blood made it exponentially worse. "You don't have to go," Lexi said over the phone that morning. "Nobody would blame you for skipping it. If I don't show up, they win," I replied, applying mascara with shaking hands. Besides, Mom would never forgive me. The drive to my parents' house felt like a march to the gallows. I parked behind a familiar Mercedes, Jonathan's car. My stomach lurched. Of course he'd be here. He'd always been the family favorite, even before we got married. Now, somehow, he still was. I smoothed my navy dress and walked through the front door, plastering on my best fake smile. The house smelled like ham and vanilla, Mom's signature holiday combination. "Skylar!" My mother rushed forward, enveloping me in a hug that felt more like an apology. "You look wonderful, honey." I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I did look good, better than I had in months. Amazing what spite can do for your appearance. The living room fell quiet as I entered. Jonathan stood by the fireplace, one arm draped casually around Christine's waist. She wore a pink sundress that made her look like a teenager. My teenage cousin Annie quickly looked away from me, suddenly fascinated by her phone. "Skylar." Jonathan nodded in my direction, his voice carrying that practiced neutrality he'd perfected in couples counseling. "Happy Easter." Before I could respond, my Aunt Margaret swooped in. "Skylar, dear, come help me in the kitchen. The deviled eggs need arranging." I followed her, grateful for the escape. In the kitchen, she handed me a glass of wine without asking. "You're handling this better than I would," she whispered. I wasn't handling it at all. I was surviving it minute by minute, smile by painful smile. The afternoon dragged on like a bad dream. I kept catching snippets of conversation about Christine's new job at Jonathan's real estate firm, about their new house in Malibu, about their future plans. Each word felt like a paper cut, small but sharp. During dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs. As I passed Jonathan's coat hanging in the hallway, something fell from his pocket, an envelope. I picked it up, intending to return it, when I noticed my name written on the front in his familiar scrawl. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Dear Skylar, by the time you read this, Christine and I will be settled in Malibu. I know you deserve better than finding out this way, but I couldn't face telling you in person. The truth is, what Christine and I have is real. We're building something special together, both personally and professionally. I've instructed my lawyer to handle the divorce proceedings. You can keep the house in San Francisco. Consider it compensation for any pain this might cause. I hope someday you'll understand that sometimes love just happens, even when we don't plan for it. Jonathan." I stood there, letter in hand, as rage replaced the hurt that had been my constant companion for months. He hadn't even had the courage to give me the letter. He'd brought it, then chickened out, just like he'd chickened out of our marriage. "Skylar?" Christine's voice came from behind me. "What are you doing up here?" I turned slowly, holding up the letter. "Found this in Jonathan's coat. Interesting reading material." Her face paled. "That's private." "Private?" I laughed, and it sounded foreign even to my own ears. "Like sleeping with your cousin's husband was private?" She took a step back. "We never meant to hurt you." "Save it." I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my purse. "You know what's funny? For months, I've been wondering what I did wrong. Now I realize the only thing I did wrong was trust either of you. I walked past her, down the stairs, and straight out the front door. In my car, I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. Lexi, remember when you said I should fight back? I'm ready. So, you're telling me he left this letter in his coat pocket? Lexi stirred her martini, eyes wide with disbelief. We sat in our favorite wine bar, the one where we'd celebrated my engagement to Jonathan 6 years ago. That's either incredibly stupid or incredibly arrogant. Knowing Jonathan, probably both. I pulled the letter from my purse and slid it across the table. Read it yourself. Lexi's expression darkened as she scanned the words. Compensation for any pain this might cause? What a condescending piece of, I know, I cut her off, taking a long sip of wine. But here's the thing, I've been doing some digging. Remember how I still had access to his email because he never changed the password to our shared Apple ID? Tell me you found something good. I leaned forward. Better than good. There are dozens of emails between him and Christine about some real estate development in Malibu. The numbers don't add up, Lexi. They're talking about investor meetings, offshore accounts. You need a lawyer, Lexi said firmly. Not just any divorce lawyer. You need someone who understands financial fraud. Already on it. I pulled out my phone and showed her the contact information. Zoe Pierce, she's supposed to be the best in San Francisco when it comes to high-profile divorces and financial investigations. When's your appointment? Tomorrow at 9. The next morning, I sat across from Zoe in her downtown office. She wasn't what I expected. Younger, with bright red hair and a no-nonsense attitude that immediately put me at ease. So, she said, reviewing the emails I'd forwarded her, your husband and cousin are involved in a real estate development project in Malibu? Yes, but something feels off about it. Look at this email thread. I pointed to my iPad screen. They're talking about alternative funding sources and creative accounting solutions. Zoe's eyebrows shot up. This is interesting. Have you noticed any unusual financial activity in your joint accounts before the separation? He moved most of our money into a separate account 3 months ago, said it was for tax purposes. Classic. Zoe made some notes. Here's what we're going to do. First, we'll file for divorce, but we won't tip our hand about what we know. I'm going to bring in a forensic accountant to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. How long will that take? A few weeks. In the meantime, I need you to act normal. Don't let them know you're suspicious. I laughed bitterly. That might be difficult considering I walked out of Easter dinner after finding his goodbye letter. Perfect, Zoe smiled. Let them think you're just hurt and angry. The more they underestimate you, the better. As I left Zoe's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Christine. Can we talk, please? I showed it to Zoe, who was walking me out. Reply, she advised. Be civil but distant. We want to keep channels of communication open. I typed, nothing to talk about. 3 dots appeared immediately. I know you're hurt, but there's more to the story. Meet me for coffee? Zoe read over my shoulder. Actually, this could be useful. Meet her, see what she says. But remember, you're gathering information, not seeking closure. That afternoon, I sat across from Christine at a busy cafe. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her wedding ring, Jonathan's grandmother's ring, the one he'd originally given to me. I wanted to explain, she started. Explain what? How you ended up sleeping with your cousin's husband? I'm fascinated to hear this. She flinched. It's not just about us. There's business involved. Big business. Jonathan has plans. For the Malibu development? I watched her face carefully. How did you... She stopped herself. Yes, among other things. Look, I know what we did was wrong, but we're building something incredible. The returns on this project could set us up for life. Us? I raised an eyebrow. Or you and Jonathan. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. I have to go. Just be careful, okay? Don't do anything rash. As she hurried away, I pulled out my phone and called Zoe. You were right, I said when she answered. Something's definitely going on with that development project, and whatever it is, Christine's scared. Good work, Zoe replied. I just got the preliminary report from my contact at the county assessor's office. You're going to want to see this. How fast can you get back to my office? I was already heading to my car. Give me 15 minutes. For the first time since finding that letter, I felt something other than pain. I felt powerful. Look at these property valuations. Zoe spread documents across her desk. The land they're developing in Malibu? They're telling investors it's worth triple its actual value. I leaned forward, scanning the numbers. How is that even possible? They're using shell companies to buy and sell the same properties back and forth, artificially inflating the values. Zoe pointed to a series of transactions. Classic real estate fraud. But here's where it gets interesting. Guess who's signing off on these inflated appraisals? Who? Your cousin Christine. She's not just sleeping with your husband. She's his partner in crime. My phone buzzed. Another text from Christine. Please tell me you haven't talked to anyone about the development. I showed Zoe the message. She smiled. She's scared. Good. But we need more. I have a contact in Malibu, Casey Perkins. He's a real estate insider who's been watching this development closely. Want to take a little trip to California? 2 days later, I found myself sitting on a beachfront patio in Malibu, watching the sunset with Casey, a tan middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and knowing eyes. Your husband's development? It's the talk of the town, Casey said, sipping his beer. Not in a good way. Local environmental groups are up in arms about the wetland they're planning to build on, but somehow they keep getting their permits approved. How? That's the million-dollar question. Casey lowered his voice. Word is, someone's been greasing palms at the Planning Commission. But here's something interesting. I was at a cocktail party last week. Your cousin Christine was there, pretty drunk, bragging about how she had dirt on every commissioner who'd voted in their favor. I felt sick. She's blackmailing them? Looks that way, but she's playing with fire. These commissioners, they have powerful friends. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I excused myself and answered. Is this Skylar? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. My name is Diana. I work at the Planning Commission and I think we need to talk. I put the call on speaker so Casey could hear. I'm listening. Your cousin, she has photos of me and someone I shouldn't have been with. She said if I didn't approve their permits, they'd go public. But I can't do it anymore. The environmental impact reports they submitted, they're completely fabricated. I looked at Casey, who was already pulling out his phone to record the conversation. Would you be willing to make a statement? I asked. Yes, I'm not the only one they're blackmailing. There are others. After the call, Casey let out a low whistle. This is bigger than we thought. Your husband and cousin aren't just committing fraud. They're running a full-scale extortion operation. Back at my hotel that evening, I called Zoe to update her. As we talked, an email notification popped up on my laptop. From my mother. Have you seen this? She wrote, with a link to a local news article. The headline made my heart stop. Controversial Malibu development faces federal investigation. I clicked the link. There was a photo of Jonathan and Christine leaving a restaurant, looking stressed. The article mentioned allegations of impropriety and possible criminal charges. My phone buzzed again, Jonathan this time. What did you do? His text read. Before I could respond, another message came through. You have no idea what you're messing with. Back off. I forwarded the threats to Zoe, then called Lexi. They're panicking, I told her. Christine's been texting me all day, and now Jonathan's making threats. Good, Lexi said firmly. Let them sweat. How does it feel? I thought about it. Honestly, terrifying, but also right. They didn't just betray me. They're hurting people, breaking laws. You're doing the right thing, Lexi assured me. But be careful. People get desperate when they're cornered. As if to prove her point, there was a knock at my hotel room door. Through the peephole, I saw Christine, mascara streaked down her face. Please, she called through the door. We need to talk. They're going to arrest us if we don't stop this investigation. I know things about Jonathan that would shock you. Help me, and I'll tell you everything. I pressed record on my phone and opened the door. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about causing pain. It's about letting people destroy themselves. Christine stumbled into my hotel room, her designer dress wrinkled, her perfect hair a mess. Jonathan's losing it, she said, collapsing onto the armchair. He's shredding documents, making threats, drinking constantly. And you're here because? I kept recording on my phone, making sure it was visible. Let her know everything she said could be used against her. Because I was stupid. She looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. I thought I was special, you know? He said all the same things to me that he probably said to you. But now that everything's falling apart, I'm seeing the real him. The real him? I sat across from her. Tell me about the real Jonathan. He's been running schemes like this for years. Before the Malibu development, there were others. In Arizona, Florida. She wiped her eyes. The wetlands project isn't even the worst of it. He's got offshore accounts, fake identities. My phone buzzed. Zoe calling. I let it go to voicemail. Why are you telling me this now? I asked Christine. Because he's planning to pin everything on me. I saw the documents he's prepared. They make it look like I masterminded the whole thing. He's going to claim he was manipulated by his wife's unstable cousin. I almost laughed. And you're surprised? This is who he is, Christine. This is who you left your family for. She stood up suddenly. I need a drink. Got anything? Minibar's over there. As she poured herself a vodka, my phone buzzed again, this time a text from Zoe. Don't trust anything she says. This is a setup. Christine turned back to me, drink in hand. I have proof, documents, recordings. I can help you take him down. All I'm asking is that you help protect me when it all comes out. Where's this proof? In a safe deposit box. I can show you tomorrow. Another text from Zoe. She's wearing a wire. They're trying to get you to admit to corporate espionage. I smiled coldly. You know what's funny, Christine? I just got some interesting texts from my lawyer. Want to check your blouse for recording devices? Her face went white. She set down her drink with shaking hands. Get out, I said quietly. And tell Jonathan that if he wants to play games, he should remember who knew all his passwords for 6 years. After she left, I called Zoe. Good catch, I said. How did you know? Because I just got off the phone with your Aunt Ava. Apparently, Christine's been calling family members, trying to paint you as obsessed and vindictive. They're building a harassment case against you. I hadn't spoken to Aunt Ava in years, not since she'd had a falling out with my mother. Why would she call you? Because she wants to meet with you. Says there's something you need to know about your family's history with Jonathan. An hour later, I pulled up to Aunt Eva's house in Pacific Heights. She opened the door before I could knock, looking exactly as I remembered, elegant, sharp-eyed, and slightly intimidating. You've gotten yourself into quite a situation, she said, leading me to her study. But you're not the first woman in this family to deal with Jonathan's games. She pulled out an old photo album. See this woman? That's your cousin Rachel from your father's side. 15 years ago, Jonathan was engaged to her. When she discovered his real estate scams, she threatened to expose him. A week later, she was arrested for drug possession. The charges were eventually dropped, but her reputation was ruined. Why didn't anyone tell me this before I married him? Rachel moved to Europe, changed her name. The family. We wanted to forget. We convinced ourselves he'd changed. Eva closed the album. But men like Jonathan don't change. They just get better at hiding who they are. My phone buzzed. An email notification. Someone had anonymously sent me documents showing Jonathan's previous fraudulent developments, complete with newspaper clippings about Rachel's arrest. This was you? I looked at Eva. She smiled slightly. I've been keeping files on Jonathan for years, waiting for someone brave enough to use them. The question is, what are you going to do with them? I forwarded the documents to Zoe, then opened my contacts. I know a gossip columnist at the San Francisco Chronicle who'd love this story. But first, tell me everything you know about Rachel. We might need her testimony. Be careful, Eva warned. Jonathan doesn't just get even, he destroys people. I know, I said, thinking of Christine's tearful performance earlier. But this time, he's the one who's going to be destroyed. The headline hit at 6 a.m. Paradise Lost. Malibu development scandal reveals pattern of fraud and blackmail. I sat in Zoe's office, watching the story spread across social media like wildfire. Your aunt's documents were the perfect ammunition, Zoe said, refreshing her news feed. The reporter did a fantastic job connecting the dots between Rachel's case and the current situation. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the article went live. Mostly family members, some supportive, others angry about airing dirty laundry. Then came the text from Jonathan. My lawyer will be in touch. Hope you're proud of yourself. Before I could respond, Zoe's receptionist buzzed. Ms. Pierce, Eleanor Wolfe is here to see Skylar. I froze. Jonathan's mother. Send her in, Zoe said, giving me a reassuring nod. Eleanor swept into the office like a storm cloud in designer clothes. How dare you, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done to my son's reputation? Your son did this to himself, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Or did you somehow miss the part about him blackmailing city officials? Those are lies. My Jonathan would never. I have proof, I cut in. Documents, recordings, witness statements. Would you like to see them? Eleanor's perfectly made-up face crumpled slightly. He told me you were unstable, that you couldn't handle him leaving you for someone younger. Someone younger? I laughed. You mean my cousin? The same cousin he's now planning to throw under the bus to save himself? What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, played the recording from my hotel room. Eleanor's face went pale as she heard her son's plan to frame Christine. That's not, he wouldn't. Check your phone, Zoe suggested. I believe Christine just filed a lawsuit against your son. Eleanor's phone buzzed on cue. She read something, then sat down heavily in the nearest chair. This can't be happening. It is happening, I said, and it's only the beginning. The FBI is investigating the offshore accounts. The environmental groups are filing civil suits. Your son's house of cards is falling, Eleanor. I'd advise you to distance yourself now. You've destroyed our family name. No, your son did that. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. After Eleanor left, Zoe pulled up another email. Rachel's agreed to testify. She's flying in from Paris next week. My phone buzzed again. Christine calling. I put it on speaker. The lawsuit isn't personal, she said quickly. I just need to protect myself. Like you protected me? I asked. By wearing a wire to set me up. Jonathan made me do it. He said if I didn't help him trap you, he'd make sure I took the fall for everything. But now he's doing it anyway, and I can't. I won't go to prison for him. Send everything you have to Zoe, I said. Every document, every recording. If you want protection, you need to come clean. I already did. Check your email. Zoe was already opening the attachments Christine had sent. Her eyes widened. This is, this is everything. Bank statements, offshore account numbers, emails about the blackmail scheme. Why should we trust these? I asked Christine. Because I'm done protecting him. He's at the house right now, drinking and raging about how this is all my fault. He actually hit me, Skylar. I'm at the emergency room getting x-rays of my jaw. I looked at Zoe, who nodded. Get documentation of the injury, she advised. File a police report. After hanging up, I sat back, feeling drained. Is it wrong that I almost feel sorry for her? She made her choices, Zoe reminded me, but her turning on Jonathan is exactly what we needed. With her testimony and Rachel's, my phone lit up with a news alert. Breaking, FBI raids Malibu development offices. Then another text from Jonathan. You happy now? You've ruined everything. I typed back, no, you ruined everything. I'm just making sure you face the consequences. You know what's interesting? Zoe said, studying the documents Christine had sent. According to these bank records, Jonathan moved most of his money to a Cayman Islands account last week, almost like he knew this was coming. Can we freeze it? Already on it, but Skylar? She looked at me seriously. He's going to be desperate now, and desperate men are dangerous. As if to prove her point, my phone buzzed with one final text from Jonathan. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. Check tomorrow's papers. You're not the only one with stories to tell. I showed Zoe the message. She smiled grimly. Let him try. We've got the truth on our side. But as I left her office, I couldn't shake the feeling that this war was far from over. Jonathan's promised media bomb dropped at dawn, a full-page ad in the San Francisco Chronicle, styled as an open letter. I read it over coffee with Lexi at our usual cafe. My wife's vendetta against me stems from her own financial misconduct, Lexi read aloud, her voice dripping with disgust. During our marriage, she embezzled funds from my company to support a gambling addiction. Keep reading, I said, sipping my coffee. It gets better. Her current accusations are a smokescreen to hide her own crimes. She threatened to destroy me if I left her. Lexi threw down the paper. This is insane. You've never even been to a casino. That's not entirely true. Remember that weekend in Vegas for your bachelorette party? Playing $20 worth of slots doesn't count as a gambling addiction. My phone rang. Zoe, have you seen it? Looking at it now. Pretty creative fiction writing. He filed a countersuit this morning. Claims you stole company documents, accessed accounts without authorization, and conspired with Christine to defraud investors. But we have proof that none of that's true. Of course we do. But that's not the point. He's trying to muddy the waters, create doubt. Classic abuser tactics. Paint the victim as the perpetrator. A text came through from Christine. He's lying about you like he lied about me. I'm sending you proof. Minutes later, an email arrived with audio attachments. I played the first one on speaker so Lexi could hear. Jonathan's voice filled our corner of the cafe. We need to make Skylar look unstable. Plant some evidence, maybe some suspicious bank transfers. Make it look like she's been stealing from the company. Christine's voice, but she hasn't done any of that. Doesn't matter. We just need enough doubt to make her accusations look like revenge. I forwarded the recording to Zoe. Can we use this? Already drafting a response, but Skylar, there's something else. Rachel's flight landed early. She's at my office now. Can you come in? 30 minutes later, I sat across from Rachel, studying the cousin I hadn't seen in 15 years. She looked older, more sophisticated, but I could still see traces of the vibrant woman I remembered. I'm sorry I didn't warn you about him, she said, her French accent slight but noticeable. When I heard you were engaged to Jonathan, I wanted to say something, but He had destroyed my credibility so thoroughly. Tell me about the drug charges, I said. They were completely fabricated. He had a corrupt police officer plant cocaine in my car. By the time the charges were dropped, my life was in shambles. My job, my reputation. I had to leave the country to start over. And now you're willing to testify? Yes. She pulled out a folder. I've kept everything: emails, photos, bank statements showing how he set me up. But more importantly, I have proof that he's done this to other women. 3 that I know of, in different cities. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jonathan. Last chance. Drop everything and walk away, or I release the photos. What photos? Lexi asked, reading over my shoulder. There are no photos, I replied. He's bluffing. He always bluffs when he's cornered. Rachel nodded. He tried the same thing with me, claimed to have compromising photos. It was all lies. Zoe's assistant burst in. Turn on the news. We crowded around Zoe's computer as she pulled up a live feed. Christine was standing outside the FBI offices in Los Angeles, microphones thrust in her face. I'm here to confess my role in the fraud scheme, she was saying, her voice shaking. But I want to be clear. I was coerced by Jonathan Wolfe. He threatened me, manipulated me, and physically abused me. I have evidence. My phone exploded with notifications. Family members, friends, reporters all wanting comments. Then came another text from Jonathan, this one different. We need to talk, please. I'll tell you everything. Meet me at our old spot. I showed Zoe the message. It's a trap, she said immediately. Of course it is, I agreed. But what if we set our own trap? What if we let him think he's finally breaking me? Lexi grabbed my arm. Skylar, no, he's dangerous. He's also desperate, Rachel added. That's when men like him make mistakes. Zoe studied me for a moment, then nodded. We'll wire you up. Have police nearby. If we can get him to confess. I typed my response to Jonathan. Okay, sunset, the bench by the Golden Gate Bridge where you proposed. His reply came instantly. Thank you, come alone. We can fix this. I looked at the 3 women around me, my lawyer, my best friend, and the cousin who could have saved me from all this if I'd only known her story. He thinks I'm coming alone, I said. He still thinks I'm that trusting woman he married. Time to show him how wrong he is. The sunset painted the Golden Gate Bridge in shades of orange and red as I approached our old spot. Zoe's voice crackled in my hidden earpiece. Police are in position. Remember, we need him to admit to the fraud and the blackmail. Jonathan sat on the bench, looking nothing like the polished real estate mogul I'd known. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and a day's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. You came, he said, standing. I wasn't sure you would. You said you wanted to talk. I kept my distance, remembering Zoe's warnings. So, talk. Everything's falling apart. He ran his hands through his hair. Christine's turned on me. The FBI's frozen our accounts, and the investors are filing lawsuits. I need your help. My help? I almost laughed. After everything you've done, I can make it worth your while. He stepped closer. There's money they haven't found, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency. Help me make this go away, and I'll split it with you. Are you actually trying to bribe me? I'm trying to save us both. His voice rose. You think you're winning? I've got enough dirt to bury you. Those company documents you stole, that's corporate espionage. You could go to prison. I didn't steal anything, Jonathan. You left those documents in our shared cloud storage. Nobody will believe that. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just like nobody believed Rachel about the drugs. Amazing what a few planted emails and a corrupt cop can accomplish. In my ear, Zoe whispered, Got it. Keep him talking about Rachel. So, you admit you set her up? Of course I did. She was going to ruin everything. just like you're trying to do. He moved closer, his voice dropping. But I learned from that mistake. This time, I've got better plans. What kind of plans? The kind that make people disappear. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the wire? Before I could react, he ripped the small microphone from my blouse. But as he did, a dozen flashlights burst to life around us. Police officers emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. "Jonathan Wolfe," a detective called out. "Step away from her and put your hands where we can see them." Jonathan's face contorted with rage. He yanked me closer, his fingers digging into my arm. "You set me up." "Like you set up Rachel?" I kept my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "Like you planned to set up Christine? You stupid bitch." He shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, too close to the cliff's edge. For a terrifying moment, I felt nothing but air behind me. Then strong hands grabbed me, pulled me to safety. It was Casey, the real estate insider from Malibu, who'd been positioned nearby as backup. Jonathan tried to run but didn't make it 3 steps before officers tackled him to the ground. As they handcuffed him, he kept screaming about revenge, about making me pay. "You okay?" Casey asked, still holding my arm. I nodded, watching as they led Jonathan away. His perfect hair was messed up, his expensive suit covered in dirt. He looked small somehow, nothing like the powerful man I'd feared. Zoe appeared at my side. "We got it all. The confession about Rachel, the attempt at witness intimidation, the assault. Between this and Christine's testimony, he's looking at serious time." My phone buzzed. A news alert. "Breaking. Stock market plunge wipes out Malibu Development Investment Fund." "That's it," Zoe said, reading over my shoulder. "His last financial lifeline, gone. The investors will take whatever's left." Lexi rushed over from where she'd been waiting in a nearby car, enveloping me in a hug. "I thought my heart would stop when he grabbed you." "I'm fine," I assured her, but my hands were shaking. "It's over." "Not quite," Zoe said. "Rachel's testimony tomorrow will be the final nail. You should be there." As if summoned by her name, Rachel appeared, having watched everything from a safe distance. "You did what I couldn't," she said softly. "You brought him down." "We did it together," I corrected her. "All of us." My phone buzzed again. "Christine. Just heard about Jonathan's arrest. Thank you. I know I don't deserve your help, but thank you." I showed the message to Zoe. "Think she's sincere? Does it matter?" Zoe asked. "She'll have her own price to pay, but at least she chose the right side in the end." As we walked away from the scene, I looked back at the bench where Jonathan had proposed years ago, the place where I'd once believed in fairy tales about perfect men and perfect lives. "Ready to go?" Lexi asked. I nodded, turning away from the past. More than ready. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. Jonathan stood at the defendant's table, still trying to maintain his air of superiority, despite the prison jumpsuit that had replaced his designer suits. "The defendant has shown no remorse," the judge began, "for a pattern of criminal behavior spanning more than a decade. The court has heard testimony from multiple victims, detailing a web of fraud, blackmail, and intimidation." I felt Rachel squeeze my hand as we sat in the gallery. Behind us, Christine watched with red-rimmed eyes, her own sentencing scheduled for the following week. "Taking into account the severity and duration of these crimes," the judge continued, "this court sentences the defendant to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 12 years. Jonathan's shoulders slumped. For the first time since I'd known him, his mask of confidence cracked completely. When the bailiff led him past our row, he stopped, trying one last time. "Skylar," he said softly, "please, don't let it end like this." I met his eyes. "You ended it the moment you chose to become a criminal. Everything since then has just been consequences. As they led him away, Aunt Ava touched my shoulder. Come on, there's something I want to show you. We drove to her house in silence. In her study, she pulled out an old leather journal. This belonged to your grandmother. Read this entry. The yellowed page was dated 40 years ago. Today, I chose myself. I walked away from a man who would have destroyed me. Some will call me foolish for leaving wealth and status behind. But I'm leaving with something more valuable, my self-respect. I never knew, I whispered. The strength you showed? Eva smiled. It runs in our blood. Speaking of which, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a check with a startling number of zeros. What is this? Your grandmother left a trust fund. The condition was that it could only be used to help family members escape toxic relationships. You're the first one who's qualified. My phone buzzed. Zoe calling. Turn on the news. The SEC just announced their findings. Eva flipped on her TV. The headline scrolled across the screen. Massive real estate fraud scheme exposed. Multiple arrests expected. They're going after everyone, Zoe said excitedly. The corrupt officials, the dirty cops, even Eleanor for helping hide the money. It's all coming down. Another call beeped in. Lexi, are you watching? They just interviewed Rachel on CNN. She was amazing. I switched channels. There was Rachel, poised and powerful, speaking about surviving Jonathan's attempts to destroy her. The ticker below showed the Malibu Development Company's stock price, $0. I have to go, I told Eva, showing her my phone. Christine's sentencing is in an hour. At the courthouse, Christine approached me before entering the courtroom. I know sorry isn't enough, she said, but I am, and I'm ready to face the consequences. Good, I replied, because actions have consequences, always. The judge was more lenient with Christine, given her cooperation. 5 years, with possibility of parole in 3. As they led her away, she turned back. The family reunion next Easter, she said. Tell them I understand why I won't be welcome. Back at my apartment that evening, I found a letter from Jonathan's mother, Eleanor, postmarked from the day before her own arrest. Inside was his grandmother's ring, my old engagement ring that he'd given to Christine. I was wrong about you, Eleanor wrote. You showed more strength and dignity than our entire family combined. The ring belongs to a woman of character. That's you, not Christine. I called Lexi. Want to help me pawn a diamond ring? I think the women's shelter could use a donation. On my way, she said. But first, check your email. You got a job offer. I opened my laptop to find an email from Casey. His real estate firm was looking for someone to head up their ethics compliance department. After watching you dismantle a criminal enterprise, he wrote, I can't think of anyone better qualified. My phone lit up with a text from Zoe. Drinks tonight? We should celebrate. I looked around my apartment, at the photos of family and friends, at the grandmother's journal Eva had let me keep, at the business card from the women's shelter where I'd started volunteering. Actually, I texted back, come over here. Bring Rachel and Lexi. I think it's time for a different kind of celebration. I opened my laptop and began to type. This is a story about betrayal, but more importantly, it's a story about finding your strength in the darkest moments. It's about standing up when the world expects you to stay down. And most of all, it's about the power of truth. The words flowed easily now. After all, I had promised to share my story as a cautionary tale, but it had become something more, a testament to resilience, to justice, and to the unshakable power of choosing yourself.